This is a full story. Kitten wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. In our senior year, my childhood friend fell for an athlete. The athlete forced her to smoke in the bathroom and slapped her in front of other girls. She endured it willingly, and her grades plummeted. I feared she'd ruin her future with this jerk and repeatedly urged her to stay away from him. She turned to him and said, "I'd rather be used up by you, a scumbag, than be cherished by that nice guy." The night before the college entrance exam, she abandoned our promise to attend the same university and secretly went to a motel with the athlete. I, on the other hand, set my sights on the highest university in the country. My childhood friend seems to be in love. In class, she's often distracted, her lips curved in a smile, one hand propping up her chin, the other holding a pen. The pen scratches across her notebook, writing down someone's name. I glanced over and saw that the name she wrote was Tony, a sharp name, much like the person himself. Tony is notorious at school, known for his arrogance and reckless behavior, like a wild beast rampaging on the basketball court. 3 days ago, this beast accidentally hit my friend Haley on the head with a basketball. At that moment, Haley and I were passing by the basketball court discussing a challenging math problem. The basketball flew towards Haley without warning. Haley cried out in pain and shot an angry glare, only to see Tony jogging over. Sweaty and with his hair styled in a casual, fresh look, Tony's handsome face was adorned with a nonchalant smile. "Hey, are you okay, little cutie?" He seemed to always call girls little cutie. Haley was taken aback. Her face flushed as she stared at Tony. She hurriedly looked down and tried to walk away. Tony, with an ambiguous smile, said, "Why run? I'm not going to eat you. Let's add each other on WeChat and play basketball sometime." Haley stopped and fumbled with her phone. So, they added each other on WeChat. I stood by silently, feeling like a pitiful fool. For 18 years, Haley had never blushed in front of me. Even when I mustered the courage to confess my feelings, she just laughed heartily. "Rocky, do you think you can handle me? Please, I like guys who are bad and domineering, not gentle and considerate warm men." Yes, I've been too gentle with her. I've liked her since we were young, like a pet cat, always tenderly stroking its fur and giving it the best food. I thought of loving someone like tending a flower, hoping it would bloom beautifully and carefree. But she hasn't bloomed for me. Perhaps Haley loves the sharp, domineering bad boys like Tony. As for me, I'm not bad. I'm even quite good. Tony quickly asked Haley to play basketball. They played for the entire afternoon. Haley didn't return to class until well into the evening study session, looking vibrant and full of energy. I held back my bitterness and advised her, "The college entrance exam is coming. You can't afford to slack off." "Oh, you're so annoying. This is why I don't like you. You don't make my heart race, understand?" Haley looked impatient. I fell silent. Haley then rummaged through my desk, asking, "Where's the cake you promised me? I haven't had dinner yet." I took out the Pikachu cream cake I bought from East District in the evening. It's her favorite cake. Whenever she craved it, no matter how busy I was, I would go to East District to buy it, even if it took an hour round trip. She enjoyed the cake without sparing me a glance. After the evening study session, she hurried off. I returned to my dorm alone. On the way, a roommate caught up and patted my shoulder, saying, "Chuan." I saw Haley at the back classroom, hugging and cuddling with Tony at the door. I paused, expecting it, but not realizing their relationship had progressed so quickly. I nodded and said, "Got it." My roommate clicked his tongue. "Haley really doesn't know what's good. Chuan, you're smart and handsome, yet you lost to a scumbag. Is he really that bad?" I didn't know much about Tony, only that he was known as a troublemaker at school. In my world, there were only Haley and my studies. I even planned a future with Haley, getting into a prestigious university, advancing academically, pursuing a PhD, or starting a business. But this future seemed to be my wishful thinking alone. You don't know Tony? He's infamous for being a scumbag. He's been with countless girls from freshman to senior year, and even got a girl pregnant in sophomore year. He's also a delinquent, fighting, smoking, and drinking outside school. Even dogs avoid him. My roommate clearly despises Tony. I frowned deeply, realizing Tony was worse than I thought. I turned and went to find Haley. When I found Haley, she was humming a song and walking briskly along the school path. The evening breeze ruffled her hair, making her look youthful and radiant, like a shining star. She is the white moonlight I've adored for over a decade. I forced a smile and approached her. Haley asked, "What's wrong? Still not back in the dorm?" "Haley, do you know about Tony? His reputation isn't good." I got straight to the point. Haley rolled her eyes. "Again? Do you really care so much about my love life? I don't owe you anything. We're just neighbors, not fiancés." Her words struck my heart like a blow, but I still advised, "Tony is very unfaithful. He's had many girlfriends, smokes, drinks, and fights. Please don't." "Enough." Haley snapped, glaring at me. "Do you think I don't know what he's like? Just now, he dragged me into the men's bathroom and and forced me to smoke. I coughed and teared up, but he just laughed. Did you think I was uncomfortable? No, I enjoyed it, and I even opened my mouth for him to blow smoke into it. Haley blushed slightly. I thought it would be disgusting, but it was so pleasurable. I never imagined I would do something so vulgar. She became more bashful, losing her anger. I stared at her in disbelief, clenching my teeth. Why are you doing this? My voice was hoarse and trembling. Haley huffed, because I like it. This is the kind of love I've always wanted. Tony makes my heart race and face flush. I don't care how bad or scummy he is. Haley paused, her lips curling up. In fact, I like his scummy and bad side. I don't want a warm man. It's boring. The warm man she referred to is me. I stood frozen, head bowed, fingers trembling. An overwhelming sadness engulfed me. All right, that's enough. Don't bother me again, or I'll never talk to you. Haley warned, then left, savoring the cigarette taste and leaving excitedly. I watched her go and stumbled back to my dorm, my eyes red. I used all my strength to suppress my heartache and crush the pangs of bitterness. In the early hours, I dreamed that I was playing basketball, arrogant and unstoppable, with Haley cheering for me. I also dreamed of smoking and drinking, getting a dragon tattoo on my arm, and dyeing my hair yellow. Haley loved me even more. She said I finally made her heart race, but I suddenly woke up, shaking my head vigorously to rid my mind of those dreams. I can be confused, but I can't abandon myself. I'm not Tony, and I don't want to become Tony. I have my own path to follow. After dawn, I took a cold shower and went a morning study. Haley was late again because she went to deliver breakfast to Tony, returning to class only after he finished eating. I chose not to acknowledge her, focusing on my studies to prepare for the upcoming college entrance exam. Haley was satisfied that I wasn't bothering her, pulling out her phone to text and using a book to block our desks, to prevent me from peeking and to avoid being caught by the teacher. I had no interest in peeking, steadily advancing toward my dream university in the increasingly scorching summer. 28 days before the college entrance exam, Haley was beaten. When she returned to the classroom, one side of her face was bruised and swollen, her hair a mess, and her eyes teary. I remained silent. She sniffled and said, "Rocky, it hurts so much." Her long-missed words made me pause my pen. Since childhood, Haley had always come to me with her troubles. If her toy was taken, she'd cry and ask me to get it back. If her spicy strips were eaten, she'd cry and ask me to get someone else's ice cream. If her parents hit her, she would cry beside me, saying it hurt. Perhaps after 18 years, I've grown used to listening to her, so my heart tightened instinctively. Indeed, old habits are hard to break. I didn't look at her, just said, "Oh, Tony hit me. He lost his game today." And when another girl brought him water, I asked him about it. He suddenly got angry, slapped me, and everyone laughed. Haley looked pitiful, tears falling onto her book. "Then leave him. The exam is coming up, and your parents want you to get into a good university," I said while flipping through my book. Haley stayed silent. I pointed at the blackboard where 28 days until the college entrance exam loomed like a mountain. Haley glanced at it and finally nodded. "Okay, I'll focus on studying and not think about Tony. I want to apply to college with you." Her words eased my heart and brought a faint smile to my lips. I still hoped for Haley's well-being, a bad habit from loving her for over a decade. I smiled softly and focused on a math problem, losing myself in it. When I finally solved it, only a few people were left in the classroom and the sky had darkened. Haley had long since disappeared. I sighed with relief, wiped the sweat from my forehead, and headed to the restroom. One problem had occupied me for 2 full hours. The restroom was empty, but upon entering, I heard rustling from the farthest stall. It sounded like someone undressing. A familiar yet shocking female voice came through like a dream. "Tony, you're so bad. Why did you come here? I haven't forgiven you yet. Baby, don't be angry. I slapped you because I was upset about losing the game. I'm sorry. Come here and kiss me." I felt a chill, my limbs stiffening. The shock brought endless confusion and sadness. It shattered my last psychological defense and trampled my years of tenderness and care into filthy dirt. Crushed and ground, I backed away, feeling extremely distressed, gagging twice, the bitterness in my nose stirring the pain in my eyes. It was hard to bear and hard to express. Tony's voice came again. "Why is my baby so soft now? Still want a kiss? Say something exciting." "No, it's too embarrassing." Haley's voice was a whisper of reluctance. "Quickly say, does Rocky like you? Isn't he gentle and caring, a warm man? Why don't you love him?" Tony's voice was full of mockery. Haley didn't answer. Tony grabbed her by the neck. "Answer me, or I'll strangle you." Haley Haley gasped, embarrassed and excited. I only love you. I'd rather be ruined by you, a scumbag, than be Rocky's precious. Ha ha ha. Well said. So exciting. Tony smirked. I stole the top student's wife. It's so damn satisfying. Haley, still ashamed and angry, protested. I'm not his wife. Being his wife would be more thrilling. Say it. You're his wife. I want to kiss the top student's wife. Tony forced her and slapped her hard. Haley reluctantly cried out, Fine, fine. I'm Rocky's wife. Ha ha ha. I walked out of the restroom numbly, blood dripping from my mouth. It was from biting my lip. Standing in the corridor, I stared at the kapok tree in front of the teaching building. When the kapok flowers bloom, their red fluff looks like blood, a view Haley and I cherished. She once pointed at the kapok tree and said, Rocky, these flowers are more romantic than you. You're just a gentle failure, haha. But if I can't find someone I truly like, I'll have to marry you. Are you swearing by the kapok tree? I asked, somewhat hopeful. She nodded, yes, swearing. Maybe I'll have to marry you. Her words were always thoughtless, but I etched them into every cell of my heart. I turned around, glaring at the restroom like a feral wolf, at the dimming entrance under the twilight. It seemed like an abyss, a disgusting abyss. A man's growth indeed happens in an instant. Even a decade of love for such an evil habit can change in a moment. I took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. The blood from my lips had stopped, and the bitterness in my eyes had faded. I just stared at that disgusting abyss. Finally, Tony and Haley emerged from the abyss, hand in hand. They looked flushed and satisfied. Seeing me, they were startled. Haley stiffened, her pupils shrinking, and she unconsciously took a few steps back. Tony looked a bit awkward, but quickly shifted to indifference and arrogance. He grinned at me and took Haley away. Haley followed, nervously glancing at me. Our eyes met, and all I felt was disgust and hatred. She seemed to notice, slowing her steps with a conflicted and hesitant expression. But she couldn't say anything to me because Tony forcefully dragged her downstairs. In the stairwell, Haley pleaded, Wait, I need to talk to Rocky. Talk my ass. I need to smoke. Go buy some outside. Find any excuse. The security guard will let you out. I requested a seat change from my homeroom teacher. I moved to the farthest seat from Haley. This way, I could focus better on preparing for the exam. Day and night, I studied relentlessly. Occasionally, when I looked up for water, I could feel someone watching me. The gaze from my old seat was filled with unease and guilt, but I didn't have time to concern myself with it. A note was passed to me. Rocky, I'm sorry for what I said. I was just joking with Tony. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash, telling my classmates not to pass any more notes. I built a wall around myself, shutting out the distant memory of her. Finally, with only one day left until the exam, the summer heat had arrived, and the cicadas outside and the sweat-soaked school uniforms marked a heavy chapter in our youth. This chapter would determine many futures. I wrote Yale University in bold letters on the blank space in my textbook, and Haley, I imagined, was still writing Tony. The last time Haley came to see me was the night before the exam. She stood at my doorstep, her figure fading into the dim glow of the motion sensor light. Returning from evening study, I saw her standing there alone. A wave of disgust surged within me. If not for needing to go home, I wouldn't have approached her. I walked over slowly, and Haley waved. Rocky, you're home too? I responded with a curt, She smiled awkwardly. Rocky, I've been thinking a lot these days. I know I was too harsh. I couldn't find a chance to apologize at school, so I came to your house. She watched my expression. I shook my head. No need. Go to bed early. The exam is tomorrow. Haley bit her lip, distressed. Can't you forgive me? Can we still be friends? No, I said firmly. Haley was taken aback, looking at me in surprise. In her mind, just coming in person to apologize should be enough for me to forgive her and resume our old friendship. For over 20 days, besides sending a note, she hadn't tried to reach me. Her focus was entirely on Tony. Tonight, she came to apologize, hoping to mend things and continue as childhood friends. But it was too late. Are you really this petty? I came all this way to apologize. Can't you be less stubborn? Haley's frustration showed, her brows furrowed with anger. She used to look at me like this when she was angry, expecting me to appease her. I always yielded. This time, I looked up. I'm just that petty. Haley, now truly angry, snapped. Tony was right. You bookworms are so narrow-minded. After 18 years, you're still not a real man. You're like a resentful woman, holding grudges forever. Her anger intensified as she criticized my refusal to relent. Look at Tony. He never holds grudges overnight. He's so generous and cool, unlike you, whining and annoying. These were her genuine feelings, built up over 18 years. I smiled bitterly. Someone like me, overly sensitive and weak, wasn't worthy of Haley. She was selfish and spoiled, suited for someone like Tony. I wish you and Tony a happy life together, I said calmly, unaffected. Haley was speechless, then turned to leave, only to turn back. Of course, we'll have children soon because tonight, I'm going to a motel with Tony. I don't care about tomorrow's exam. Her voice was filled with a sense of vindictive pleasure. She was waiting for my panic, for me to beg her not to go to the motel and to take the exam seriously. She knew exactly how to manipulate me. Suddenly, I remembered she had once promised to take the exam with me, but she had long forgotten, and I no longer wanted to remember. My heart was as cold as stone. Do as you please. The next morning, I set out early for the exam. Haley's parents stopped me, looking anxious. Rocky, have you seen Haley? We just noticed she's not in her room. I paused, realizing that Haley had indeed gone to the motel with Tony last night. She gave up the crucial college entrance exam. For a scoundrel, she ruined her future. I remained calm, shook my head and said, I don't know, and continued towards the exam. From that moment, our destinies were forever different. I aimed for Yale University, reaching for the skies, decorating my youthful dreams on the crown of my life. And Haley, who knows? Who cares? After the exam, I let out a long sigh of relief. I performed perfectly, as if blessed by the muse of literature, writing with inspiration. I was confident of being admitted to Yale, becoming the second student from our school in 5 years to achieve this. My parents were thrilled, smiling broadly at the news. They immediately bought fine wine and dishes, and we celebrated with laughter and joy. My mother, ever curious, began to talk about my personal life. Once you're in college, you can start dating. If you and Haley were together, my mother began, but was cut off by my father. Don't mention Haley. I heard from her parents that she's gone bad, hanging out with punks. It's infuriating. She probably won't get into a good university. My father had heard some rumors. My mother was shocked. What? Haley, such a good girl, has gone astray? As soon as she spoke, Haley's parents rushed in. They asked immediately, Rocky, have you seen Haley? She's run away. I shook my head. My parents quickly asked what happened. Haley's mother wiped her tears. Haley went to a motel with a punk the night before the exam and was in no condition for the exam the next day. She said she wouldn't get into a good university anyway, so don't expect much. Haley's father added, I was so furious, I hit her. In her anger, she locked herself in her room, and we only found out she was missing when we called her to dinner. My parents were stunned. No one expected that the sweet girl who used to be by my side would fall so low. What are we going to do? It's a disaster. How did my daughter end up like this? Haley's mother cried out. Haley's father gritted his teeth and went off to find her. 3 days later, I finally learned where Haley had gone. She and Tony had gone to Arizona for summer work. Although it was called summer work, it was actually just partying and having fun. When they ran out of money, they asked her parents to send more, or she wouldn't come home. Her parents gave in, persuading her to return at the end of June. After all, the results were out, and she needed to see them. I achieved my goal, being admitted to Yale University as the top student in the city, which shocked everyone. My parents were overjoyed, using their savings to host a grand banquet with 30 tables, celebrating with guests from all around. At the banquet, I saw Haley. She sat in a corner, engrossed in her phone, smiling. Clearly, she was still infatuated with Tony. Haley's mother saw me and quickly pulled Haley. Haley, Rocky is here. Haley looked up and our eyes met. I calmly nodded. She pouted and said, congratulations, you've made a name for yourself with your studies. Haley's mother, anxious, scolded Haley. What kind of attitude is that? Rocky got into Yale, and you? A lousy college, and you're acting all high and mighty? Is Yale University so great? I just don't like bookworms. They're boring and uninteresting. Haley said loudly on purpose. She still held a grudge against me because I refused to forgive her. It was rather amusing, as if I were the one at fault. After the graduation banquet, I headed north ahead of schedule. I couldn't wait to step into the highest university in the country, even though the school year was still over a month away. My family wasn't wealthy, but since I got into Yale, the school awarded me, and a local real estate developer gave me $100,000 and a house. So, I was now among the wealthier peers. I rented a place near Yale, fulfilling my dream of reaching the highest institution, and I was truly happy. When school started, I was even happier. The military training first scrubbed away my youth, and the engaging courses filled my once empty mind. In this university full of top students, I managed to maintain my position without being pushed to the margins. I made steady progress and achieved great things. I became a rising star, speaking confidently at major seminars, and was a proud protege in the eyes of my mentors. I also attracted some outstanding girls. They were talented, visionary, and exuded a positive, sophisticated demeanor. For the first time, I realized realized how ridiculous Haley was. I often wondered how foolish I must have been to weep over Haley back then. During my graduate studies, I found love. Her name was Serena, a native from Arizona, and she was the provincial top student while I was the city top student. We had actually known each other for a while and had met a few times at school. I was attracted to her intellect and she to my elegance, but neither of us spoke up. True love isn't something easily expressed. It wasn't until we were assigned to the same mentor and spent more time together that we finally held hands. She was 1.65 meters tall, with fair skin and a dimpled smile. I always liked to poke her dimple, and she would scold me, but always with a happy smile. Serena and I were inseparable, but both of us had grand ambitions, so we started our own business during our free time. After analyzing, Serena thought cross-border e-commerce had potential, and with relatives in the field, they could guide us. So, we ventured into cross-border e-commerce. In just 2 years, we achieved modest success, earning nearly $1 million annually. I shared this joy with my mentor, who commented, "So, several seniors already earn $1 million a year. Yale students shouldn't settle for less." His words motivated me, and Serena and I were determined to make our mark. After graduating, we earned $2 million a year. Serena decided to pursue a PhD. Her idea was simple: to keep a fallback option. Business is basically stable now. You can handle it on your own. I'll do a PhD and become a professor. This way, our family will be secure. I teased her. "I think you just want an easy job." She laughed. "Being an official is good. We'll collude. I'll attract investment and you can focus on investing. It's complementary." We arranged our plans. I left academia and plunged into business. Serena continued to climb the academic ladder. During this time, we had a child. It was a bit unexpected for me. I asked Serena, "Should we have the baby or not?" She covered her belly and glared at me. "What do you mean? You want to abort? You can't even do that to my baby." She wanted to keep the baby. This wasn't unusual among PhD students. It's possible to balance doctoral studies and having a baby. I embraced her without saying a word, just nodding firmly. This baby will be born. When I was 26, my child was born. At the same time, my company was officially established. Previously, it had been just a studio. The company people called my son Little Boss. I am the big boss. Serena named our son Jack. I asked Serena why she chose this name. She said, "It's up to you. I remember your mother always liked this name." I was momentarily stunned, recalling someone long faded from memory. I joked, "People say this name is plain and unremarkable. Not cool at all." "Really? Who says that?" Serena didn't understand. At my level, I don't either. Maybe only Haley would understand. People are like that. What you discard as worthless might be a treasure to someone else. When Jack was 2, my company in New York was fully established, earning over $30 million annually. My parents, now older, kept urging me to bring my grandson home. I had returned over the years, but it was always a brief visit, and I never brought Jack. I discussed with Serena about taking Jack back to our hometown and, if possible, investing in local development. Serena had no objections and even asked if she should come along. "If you're busy, you don't need to come. Once I finish my PhD, we can return and have a grand wedding reception." Serena and I had registered our marriage, but hadn't held a reception. She agreed. "All right, you go ahead. Say hello to my parents for me." I took Jack back to my hometown. The town had undergone significant changes with extensive urban development, making some areas unrecognizable. At home, my parents were thrilled, hugging Jack and even neglecting to prepare a meal. Jack, at such a young age, was handsome and composed, just like me. "This little guy is really handsome. With his demeanor, he will surely succeed," my dad praised. Of course, Rocky is so successful. How could his son not be? My mom was very proud. During dinner, Jack ate quietly, occasionally glancing at his grandparents, charming everyone. My mom then mentioned the neighbors. They are in a terrible situation. They were already poor, and then Haley made it worse, sigh. My mom lamented. I smiled nonchalantly. "What happened with Haley?" "Not long after you left for New York, Haley drove a motorcycle without a license and hit an old man, injuring him badly. She had to pay $30,000 to avoid jail, and her family collapsed." My dad explained, "I heard the motorcycle was from a small-time thug, her boyfriend." Disgusting. They haven't broken up. They refused to separate at first, and now they're probably stuck together, two lowlifes. I raised my eyebrows, surprised that Haley hadn't broken up with Tony after all these years. She really does love scumbags. It's so sad. What are they doing now? I asked out of curiosity. What's left for them to do? Haley, now older, has started selling things to survive. Otherwise, she'd starve. And that thug drinks and gambles, relying on her for everything. "We don't know the details and don't care to," my parents said, disapproving. I didn't want to hear more. It was disheartening. The next day, several city officials suddenly came to to visit me. I understood immediately. As a taxpayer, my details are with the tax bureau. The local leaders must know I've made a fortune in New York. I earn tens of millions a year with substantial savings and strong financial power, and I was once the top student of the city. I am a key investor the hometown wants to attract. Indeed, the leaders hoped I would invest back home and offered me the best loans and prime land. I was inclined to agree, and we quickly settled on a $30 million investment deal. This amount matched my annual income. Serena fully supported me and even arranged for my Maybach to be transported from New York. Since you're investing in your hometown, you can't just walk around. Get a driver and a car for appearances. So, I got back into the familiar Maybach. The driver was chosen from the local population. On a free day, I wanted to visit the old street I used to frequent, so I had the driver take me there. When we arrived, the crowd was overwhelming. President Rocky, this Golden Harbor is our city's largest internet-famous street. Besides the shops, there are countless stalls, and it's always congested. The driver complained about the traffic. I didn't mind the congestion. It was a chance to enjoy the familiar local atmosphere. I rolled down the window and started taking photos with my camera, an amateur hobby inspired by Serena's complaints. She said my photography skills were too abstract, making her look like a painting by Van Gogh. So, I had diligently learned photography and practiced in my spare time. I planned to take some pictures of my hometown to show Serena. Just after taking a couple of photos, a woman in gray clothes with messy hair approached, holding flowers and shouting loudly, "Boss, buy some flowers for your wife?" Her voice was hoarse and harsh, like a wilted eggplant battered by the elements. I paused, frowning at her. She was very enthusiastic, pushing the roses towards the car. "Boss, buy some flowers for your wife. They're very good." The driver, for safety, had to stop and scold her harshly. "Get away. Who would buy your flowers?" The woman smiled obsequiously. "Buy a bunch. They're really good." I continued to look at her, noting her sallow face, bruised eyes, and the marks on her neck. "Haley, you've become so unattractive." I put down the camera and calmly leaned against the seat, quietly observing the flower seller. The driver got out and chased her away. "Are you blind? Do you know who's in the car? Get lost." "Boss, don't be angry. My flowers are really good," Haley said softly, still flattering. The driver, furious, knocked the flowers from Haley's hands, scattering the vibrant roses. "Does President Rocky look like someone who buys flowers? Get out. What a piece of junk." The driver was furious. Haley was finally scared, repeatedly apologizing and hurriedly picking up the flowers, looking very distressed. The onlookers, moved by a sense of justice, looked at me with curiosity. Haley, startled and trembling, said, "Thank you, boss, thank you." She looked up at me closely. Earlier, while I was in the car and she was outside with the large bouquet of roses, she hadn't really looked at me. Now, she examined me closely. We were no more than 10 centimeters apart. In that moment, she seemed struck by lightning, her entire body stiffening, and the flowers she had just picked up fell again. It felt like we were separated by years of time, gazing at each other. It was like many years ago when she woke up one afternoon, wiping drool from the desk and complaining, "Rocky, you didn't help me with the pillow. My neck hurts from sleeping." Or like a weekend when we went out, and she suddenly said on the roller coaster, "Rocky, I think I wet my pants." Even like when she complained about my dullness with an angry look, "You're so boring. When will I meet a cool, rebellious bad boy?" We had locked eyes many times, but none of those moments were about love. Perhaps it's better. I have found a better love. I smiled gently. "Your flowers are all scattered. I'll buy them all." Only then did Haley come to her senses, her eyes reddening. She stared at me, my face, my clothes, my hair. Finally, she lowered her head, her back trembling, and tears fell silently to the ground. Her throat moved as she made a vague sound, as if trying to say something. But before she could speak, a shabby, drunken big man rushed over and kicked Haley. Haley cried out in pain, falling face first into the mud, her teeth knocked out. "You worthless bitch, selling flowers? All fallen on the ground. Useless, filthy." The big man cursed and kicked Haley again. Tony's palms were sweaty with a foul stench. He might not have bathed for 3 days. I withdrew my hand, remaining calm. "Tony, long time no see." I believed I had no murderous intent, but Tony flinched at my words and overly calm gaze, feeling guilty. After all, back in the restroom years ago, he had mocked and humiliated me. "Rocky, I was wrong. I was terribly wrong. I really deserved to die. I was deceived by that bitch bitch of a woman. Damn, she's so vile. Tony hurriedly apologized and kicked Haley. Haley fell to the ground, seemingly drained of strength. She cried suppressively, covering her face with her hands, afraid to show herself. I glanced at her and smiled at Tony. It's fine. I was just passing by. Your flowers were damaged by my driver. I'll compensate you. No need. Tony bowed and nodded, extremely humble. I turned to get in the car and casually told the driver, Shaoli, give him $500. The driver reluctantly handed over the money. Tony took the money, looking awkward for a moment, but soon his face brightened with joy, as money meant he could gamble. Thank you, President Rocky. Thank you so much. Please come by often. Amid Tony's flattery and Haley's crying, the Maybach elegantly drove away. I remained calm, only losing interest in taking photos. I felt like a hero, with past worldly affairs left unspoken. In the evening, after inspecting the new base, I returned home. The house was bustling. I saw two familiar faces. Haley's parents. They brought a large number of gifts, showering compliments on my parents. My parents, holding Jack, responded with half-hearted engagement. When they saw me return, Haley's parents immediately stood up to greet me, even bowing. I had no ill will toward them and quickly stopped them. Uncle Andy, what are you doing? Haley's mother began to cry. Rocky, Haley suddenly came home and she said she saw you. I suddenly realized that Haley had informed them. I said nothing and went to hug Jack. Haley's father cautiously spoke. Rocky, you saw Haley's condition? She deeply regrets it and even wished she were dead. I still said nothing. My mother snorted. Old neighbors, if you have something to say, just say it. My son is busy. The mayor is giving him land to start a company. Haley's mother hurriedly got to the point. Rocky, although my daughter married Tony, she has no children and she no longer loves Tony. We were so disappointed in Haley before that we severed ties with her. She had no choice but to rely on Tony. Haley's father added, but Tony is so cruel. He married Haley and forced her to make money for rent and food. Otherwise, he would beat and scold her. Haley became numb, living a life worse than death, and she couldn't even escape. Seeing you today gave her the courage to come back, saying she was wrong. Both of them had red, tear-filled eyes, showing some sympathy for their daughter. So, I looked up. The two old people exchanged glances and pleaded in unison. Rocky, please see Haley. She can only rely on you to get out of the quagmire now. The implication was that I should save Haley. Haley's body and mind were both broken. Only I could give her a new life. She wants to see me? I poured myself a cup of tea. Yes, after coming back, she wouldn't eat or drink, just staring blankly. When asked what was wrong, she would cry, finally saying she wanted to see you. Haley's mother took a step closer. When we came, she took the initiative to bathe and clean herself up. She really wants to see you. Not seeing her. Haley's parents wiped their tears and left. Serena called with a video, saying she was preparing a surprise for me. When I asked what the surprise was, she coquettishly tilted her face. I won't tell you, just wait and see. So I waited. During this time, I rented a floor of office space near the land I invested in. The land was next to the city's largest Walmart and could be developed into a commercial district. I could follow up with a low-interest loan from the city. So, I also needed to rent an office nearby to serve as my base, to recruit and build up the team. Since the office was originally a commercial space, it didn't take much effort to transform it. As for other permits and licenses, the city took care of them all. Thus, I had a company in my hometown with only 12 employees for now. I usually sit in the office, planning the company's development and operations while remotely managing the New York office. This was quite comfortable, but somehow, news of my return and company opening spread, and a group of high school classmates came to visit. They arrived at my office, enthusiastically calling me boss and inviting me to a class reunion. My gaze passed through them and landed on a woman in a white dress at the back of the crowd. Haley. She had her hair tied up in a high ponytail, wearing a clean white dress, and her face was heavily powdered, hiding the ravages of time. If not scrutinized closely, she still had some charm. President Rocky, Haley asked us to come. She said everyone hasn't gathered for a long time, so let's have a reunion, someone explained. All eyes turned to Haley. Haley trembled with nervousness, barely managing to lift her head and attempt a bright smile, which came out stiffly, but she eventually smiled. Rocky, we're having a reunion. Please come. She said this while subconsciously brushing her hair, revealing the bruise behind her ear, then quickly covering it. I looked at her, at the girl I had loved for 18 years. She was like a wilted kapok, having long lost her former brilliance. She tried to bloom again in the cold winter, hoping to attract the bees that once adored her. But this kapok had long been tainted by flies. I stood up, had the secretary entertain everyone, and then waved for Haley to follow me. I indicated for her to follow me to a secluded spot. that. She was overjoyed, like a child who got candy, obediently following me out of the office. We reached the stairwell. She grew nervous again, her face flushed, staring at me without blinking. I didn't want to look at her much and calmly said, "I've made it clear to your parents. I don't want to see you. Just live well after leaving Tony. No need to come find me." Haley stiffened, her once red face turning ashen. She took a step back, her back against the wall, and began to retch. I understand why she was retching. Many years ago, I too had retched outside a restroom, a physiological reaction to heartache at its extreme. So, I did not comfort Haley. She was nearly collapsing, crouched with her knees hugged, pleading, "Rocky, don't do this to me. I can't take it. I'm sorry, please." I stood with my back to her, gazing out the window. The sky was very blue, like the sky of Yale University, like the sky Serena once pointed to, under which we laughed. Thinking of Serena, a smile appeared at the corner of my mouth. So I gave Haley one last bit of care. "Your parents are suffering. I can help arrange work for them, but beyond that, I am powerless." "And me? What about me?" Haley raised her head, tears in her eyes. "I have nothing left. No education, no skills. I'm a withered flower. What should I do?" "Rocky, what should I do? As long as a person wants to live, they can live." "No, you know what I want, Rocky. Come back to me. I'll divorce Tony. I just want to be your woman." Haley became emotional. She even threw herself at me. "Rocky, let's start over, okay? I know you have a wife and kids. I don't mind. I can be your mistress, your lover, anything." I pushed her away forcefully, feeling disgusted. "Haley, please have some self-respect." She wiped her tears and ripped off her dress, exposing a lot of skin, still pale, but covered with bruises and scars. "Rocky, I love you. I was foolish before. You're not the boring, honest man. So many girls liked you, and I looked down on you. I was terribly wrong. I admit my mistake. Look at my body. It still has some charm. Will you take me? I give myself to you now, will you?" She babbled incoherently, focused on undressing. I, however, remembered her affair with Tony at the motel. A wave of nausea came over me, and I turned to leave. A slender figure came into view, meeting my gaze. I was stunned, because the visitor was my wife. She smiled, also wearing a white dress, her hair elegantly pinned up, exuding an air of grace and nobility. "Serena, what are you doing here?" I was both surprised and delighted. Serena smiled. "Wasn't I supposed to surprise you? I'm here to hold our wedding reception and let everyone know that I married you." She was a bit smug, her gaze falling on Haley behind me, looking surprised. Haley was frozen in place, staring blankly at Serena. Serena was like the moon in the sky. Haley was like grass on the ground. One was beautiful and elegant, the other a mess. Serena hadn't said anything yet, but Haley couldn't bear to look at her, sitting numbly on the ground, silently crying, retching in pain. Serena and I finally held the wedding. City leaders came to show support. The scene was very lively. A year later, the commercial street I invested in was on track, becoming the premier bustling area in the south of the city. The cross-border e-commerce company in New York experienced a boom, with orders nonstop, earning $10 million in a single quarter at its peak. It seemed becoming a billionaire was just around the corner. Meanwhile, news of Haley came after a long time. She ignited the gas, and in the explosive spark, perished with Tony. My mother said that Haley had actually gotten better since I arranged work for her parents. She obediently stayed with her parents, relying on them, but she often had fits, crying inconsolably for no apparent reason. Later, Tony came back to find her, begging her to return, and she indeed went back, angering her parents to death, who decided never to care for her again. Tony then shamelessly used and tortured Haley like a slave. One night, Haley ignited the gas, ending her life with Tony. It seemed she returned only to meet her end together. Haley's parents cried out in agony, ultimately unable to face their daughter's death without emotion. Later, they went to clean up Haley's belongings and found a letter Haley had left for me. I unfolded the letter, which was densely filled with writing. "Rocky, your wife is truly beautiful, so well matched with you. You will definitely be happy. I often think, if I had been able to go to college with you back then, would my outcome have been different? I married you in my dreams, truly, regretting my youthful foolishness. Looking back, you are the only one. If there is an afterlife, I will never leave you. I really want to see you smile gently at me again." The letter was very scattered, and many words were incorrect. After reading it, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, quietly gazing at the spring sky. In this season, the K-pop flowers at the school should be blooming, right? Will they be as brilliant and grand as in previous years? Behind me, my wife came over, resting her chin on my shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" "I was thinking about the K-pop flowers at my alma mater. They're really beautiful," I smiled. "Then let's go see them. Take Jack with us," my wife said matter-of-factly. I thought about it and agreed. What's there to think about? Flowers bloom and and wither. Time flows like water. The withered flowers are long decayed and broken, while the blooming flowers are still brilliant and fresh. Let's go see them. The end. If you like Kitten's story, please follow and like it. Updated every morning at 9 a.m.